Doodly doo, 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 doo doo, doodly doo, doodly doo, doodly doo, doo 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 doo, doodly doo, doodly doo, doo doo, doodly doo, doodly doo, doo 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 doo. Well, boom. Now I'm sure you're asking me, what are you talking about, Kazuraki? Are you trying to gatekeep the franchise? No, that's not what I'm doing. In fact, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to dispel the misconception of who it's actually for, according to people who gatekeep the franchise. That's why I'm asking the question, because a portion of the fanbase are violently against any change, as if the show isn't ever changing. Even back in its initial inception, it changed pretty quickly. It was originally intended as an educational vehicle to teach kids about history, as well as teach them about prejudice and other social morals. Sidney Newman, one of the people in charge himself, specifically issued an edict for not wanting bug-eyed monsters. That was broken pretty quickly though, with the second story transmitted the Daleks. That was the first sign of how malleable the show was as a concept. The show would continue to follow its original educational premise from time to time for the next few years, sandwiched between speculative science fiction stories. Pure historical stories, so called because the only science fiction elements in a lot of them was how the Doctor and his companions got there, would exist, but the show would focus mainly on being a science fiction show now. The stories would still try to teach people things, but in a science fiction lens, in order to get past the censors of the day. For the most part, the show would stick to the same thing until the end of the 10th planet, where one new concept, regeneration, or rejuvenation as it was initially called, would bring with it a different tone. William Hartnell changing to Patrick Troughton would change what the show's major focus would be. The Highlanders, the story which would introduce one of the best companions, Jamie McCrimmon, would be the last pure historical story for a long time. Now, while the show would continue to teach its audience, it would be predominantly through the lens of a science fiction show. It would become very much a science fiction show that anyone could enjoy, but geeky people, really into science fiction, would enjoy the most. It would follow the Monster of the Week format, mostly represented by literal monsters, but often represented by humans or humanoids who were terrible people. Another few years would pass, and during the epic 10-part The War Games, culminating in the next regeneration, the show would change again. Patrick Troughton would regenerate off-screen into John Pertwee, and the show would regenerate with it. The Doctor was exiled to Earth by the Time Lords, and so the show would rarely go to other planets. The show would essentially become the Avengers, no, not that one, but with alien invasions and mad scientists. For the next 5 years or so, it would stick to that format until, along with a regeneration of the Doctor, the people in charge of the show would change as well. So in the first 10 years or so, it would change multiple times. It changed from an educational show to a speculative science fiction show to a spy show with aliens. That's a lot of change for a TV show that people claim has never changed before the recent seasons. I know what you're thinking. Surely we have no need for any more video, as we've answered the question, right? Nope. We're not quite there yet, I'm afraid. Now with Tom Baker in the lead role, it would become a gothic horror show with science fiction elements. The show would take inspiration from the films of Hammer, a popular horror studio of the time, but with a more family-friendly tone for TV. Yes, it still wouldn't be 100% family-friendly, as it would battle against known TV advocates like Mary Whitehouse at times, but it would never get to the M-rating level of Hammer. After a few years, it would regenerate again, although Tom Baker would remain, back into a speculative science fiction TV show. This would continue until the next regeneration, where it would become a hard science fiction show, with the science being rooted somewhat in reality. Now starring Peter Davison, who was a very popular up-and-coming actor at the time, most of his stories would be hard science fiction, except for the one time with Black Orchid, where it would briefly stop in the pure historical show it was originally intended as. Another regeneration would bring another change. Now starring Colin Baker, it would now become a speculative science fiction TV show again. Soon it would regenerate again, with Sylvester McCoy taking over the lead role and become a any concept is fine, no concept is too wacky show. Unfortunately, the show would soon be cancelled. After losing the on-again, off-again battle with cancellation it had been fighting most of its existence. Years would pass, and after multiple failed attempts to revive the show, a TV movie starring Paul McGann in the lead role would come to fruition. A North American co-production filmed in Canada. It would feel partially like the old show, with an American sensibility. Alas, it wasn't proven to be successful enough to continue. More time would pass, until it was revived successfully in 2005 by Russell T Davies, a longtime Doctor Who fan and a popular writer-producer at the time. It would become a fantasy science fiction show starring Christopher Eccleston and then David Tennant, with it also teaching morals and history, but with less subtle science fiction infused imagery. Matt Smith would soon become the star, and would regenerate the show because he was much younger than every previous Doctor, and the show would lean more into being a fairy tale fantasy tone. My personal favourite Doctor, Peter Capaldi, would be up next, and the tone would get a little darker and more in a contemporary science fiction tone. It would break a lot of the show's rules, which weren't exactly set in stone to begin with, including establishing the Time Lords and Time Ladies could change gender. This should be showcased with the next regeneration of the Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker. The tone would become more grim and pessimistic, not a thing the show would outright avoid beforehand, but usually peppered with quips and flamboyance. The next big change would happen when the BBC would go into co-production with Disney. David Tennant would briefly turn, albeit as a new incarnation of the Doctor, for a few episodes before the show inevitably became different again. Inevitably, because the show was allowed to be less subtle about its message, people who were looking for reasons to hate the show took offence. Despite the fact that the show hadn't changed that much, and Ngugi Gatwa would be a very charismatic lead of the show, people would still complain. Now with his regeneration into a new incarnation, played by former companion Billy Piper, who knows how the show will change again. So who's Doctor Who for then? Is it for kids who want to learn about history? Science fiction geeks? Spy fiction fans? Horror fans? People looking for realistic science fiction? Fans of anything goes science fiction? Fantasy science fiction fans? Dark science fiction fans? The answer is everybody and no one. It's for anyone who enjoys the show and is a fan of it. But deep down, it has always been about acceptance, good winning over evil, having fun, and showing the best and worst of humanity and the universe around it. Essentially, that's why I wanted to do this video, to make a point. Doctor Who has never been just for one type of person, even when it was a niche franchise in the classic era. When people complain using the change now it sucks mentality because they don't personally like how it is now, that's never really made sense to me. Not only has the show been constantly changing, but even if it hadn't, no franchise remains constantly popular for 60 plus years without changing what it is at times. The mentality of the show changing means it isn't as good as it used to be, or it's not the show it was, or it's a betrayal of how the franchise is ludicrous. By that logic, it hasn't been what it was pretty much since day one. The claim it's not how the show should be, even though the show has never been one thing for a long period of time. While it's not always been as representative as it is now, it's never been completely against representation either. That's why I'm saying it's for everyone and no one. It's for everyone, as if it's not made for one particular person or type of person, but it's made for no one, as it's no one person is the target audience. That's the beauty of Doctor Who. Regardless of how some fans think, it's a franchise that doesn't discriminate. Unless you're trying to destroy the universe, take over Australia, or turn back time to the Golden Age, no one is depicted as being more valid or less valid than any other person. And my love for the franchise won't waver just because the tone or the subtleness of its message changes over time. I'm going to stay with the franchise no matter what. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit longer than usual because even though I'm passionate about all my videos, I was more passionate about this video than usual. Yeah, like and subscribe if you like it. Feel free to comment. I usually respond to every comment, the few I get. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one. Also, there should be some videos that just come up on the screen. Not Doctor Who related specifically, but ones you might be interested in if you're interested in similar things as me. Yeah. I'll answer it, even if I don't agree with it. Well, that's the end of the video. Bye.